There are three main factors that you need to consider when constructing the psychological side of any character. The first is the character's emotions. An emotion is a psychological departure from the homeostasis that is subjectively experienced in strong feeling and manifests itself in neuromuscular, respiratory, cardiovascular, hormonal, and other bodily changes preparatory to overt acts which may or may not be performed. But to put it in words that we can actually use, let's just say that an emotion is a feeling that affects your characters physically and mentally. These feelings are the driving force behind every one of your character's actions. For example, let's say that your story consists of a stickman who goes up to the mailbox in front of his house, opens the mailbox, takes a letter out, and goes back to his house. If the character is feeling the emotion of love and is expecting a letter from the girl of his dreams, you might show him anxiously peering out the window, waiting for the mailman to arrive. Then, as soon as the mail is delivered, he rushes out the door, flings the mailbox open, and without wasting the time of going back to his house first, he carefully opens the letter and begins reading it. But, if the character is feeling an emotion of guilt because he knows that the mailbox is full of overdue collection notices, he would probably leave the mail out there until he gets home from work, where he slowly makes his way to the mailbox, unlatches it, and half-heartedly grabs the mail and heads back to his house without even bothering to close the mailbox. In both examples, the character was simply getting his mail, but you can see how the emotions that the character was feeling will hugely impact the way he goes about it. The next thing you should consider in your characters is their attitude. At first glance, you may think that your character's attitude and his emotions are the same thing, but with a little closer examination, you'll see that there is actually a huge difference between the character's emotions and his attitude. A character's attitude is a persistent disposition to act either positively or negatively toward a person, group, object, situation, or value. Continuing with the previous example, let's examine the way Stickman's attitude will affect the way he goes about getting his love letter. A shy stickman would be anxiously peering out the window until the mailman drops off his letter. He would then wait until the mail truck was driven out of sight, at which time he would crack the door open slightly and peer out to make sure nobody was watching. Then he would shuffle towards the mailbox, where he would carefully take the letter and run excitedly back to read his love letter in the privacy of his own home. On the other hand, the outgoing stickman would already be standing out on the street, just waiting for the second that mailman arrives. When the mail truck pulls up, he doesn't even wait for the mailman to place the letter in the mailbox, but rather takes the mail directly from the mailman, opens it immediately, inhales the sweet perfume emanating from the letter, and begins reading it before the mailman even has time to drive off. These examples make it plain to see that your character's personality has a huge impact on the way your story takes form. It is therefore safe to assume that it's definitely worth your time to analyze and define your character's attitude. The third thing you need to consider when designing a character is past experience. Let's say that the stickman from the last example is in love and waiting for a letter from his girlfriend. Unfortunately, he's had some bad experiences with mailboxes in the past and has a super irrational fear of them. So, rather than simply walking out and getting the mail like a normal stickman would, he stays inside and constructs a complicated mail extraction device, which he extends from the safety of his home and awkwardly attempts to remove his love letter from the mailbox. You can see how, by simply examining these 3 points, we were able to turn something as mundane and boring as taking a letter from a mailbox into something much more appealing, which after all is the entire point, right?